Hey everybody, and welcome to the next edition of the Soccer Fitness Goals video blog. This week was week 2 of the UEFA Champions League group matches, and it included a very exciting game between PSG and Bayern Munich, which PSG ended up winning by a score of 3-0. And following the match, there were some interesting consequences that included Bayern's new coach, Carlo Ancelotti, being fired. So the subject of the blog for this week is going to be why I think he should not have been fired. So first of all, the Champions League being only a couple of weeks old and the Bundesliga being only 3 or 4 weeks old makes it way too soon for any new coach to be fired. In general, it should take a new coach taking over a club, especially a big club like Bayern Munich, several months in order to fully get to know the strengths and weaknesses of all of his players and to be able to implement the exact strategy and tactics that he wants to do in training and in match play. So just because they have a result in the beginning of the year that's unfavorable, like a 3-0 loss to a very good PSG team, to me, it's way too soon to be making any rash judgments and firing a coach. Expanding on this idea, the lack of time given to Carlo Ancelotti is even more surprising considering the resume and the experience and track record of success that he had leading up to this point. This is a guy who's coached and won the Champions League with 2 different clubs in 2 different decades. He's a former Italian national team player, and he's coached at the top level and been very successful in several different European leagues. That background and track record alone should have earned Ancelotti, of all people, at least a few more months to try to turn some of these early negative results around. So one final point about this, and I think this is something that needs to be said because it applies to young players pretty much all over the world, in big clubs, in smaller professional clubs, and even a lot of the university and amateur club players that I work with and many other coaches like me are working with here in Canada. And that's that players a lot of times are too selfish. That means that if something goes wrong, and so for example in a big game like this that you lose by a big score like 3-0, a selfish player, the first thing that they'll do is they'll start to blame everybody else around them. They'll blame their teammates, they'll blame their coach, they might blame management, they might blame the referee. They'll take all of the responsibility away from themselves and their own performance, and they'll try to pass it on to other people. And so unfortunately, with a big club like Bayern Munich, where they're competing in the Champions League, probably expecting to win it, and of course expecting to win their own domestic league as well, the moment that things go wrong, if they have players who are selfish, that don't accept responsibility and that don't try to look at what they could have done differently and instead try to pass the blame to other people, including the coach, then it's very likely that a lot of these players will turn on the coach and lose their respect and motivation to play for him, and it's likely that that was the case here with Ancelotti. And again, I just think it's wrong for players to be selfish and not to accept blame and try to put some more of the blame on themselves and what they could have done better when things go wrong. Ultimately, everybody involved with a club, especially a big club like Bayern Munich, needs to accept and take responsibility for their performance, whether it's a good performance or whether it's a poor performance. But in my opinion, coaches need to be given more time to implement the changes within the team that they want to do before any rash judgments can be made on their performance. If Bayern and Carlo Ancelotti were consistently underperforming, for example, failing to get out of the group in the Champions League, struggling in the league, maybe not making a place in the Champions League for next year, at some point then I think it would make sense to blame the coach and potentially even to replace the coach. But after a few weeks into the season and just one bad result, it's just too soon to make any rash judgments. And I think Bayern are going to regret having fired a top experienced coach like Carlo Ancelotti so soon. So that's it for the Soccer Fitness Goals video blog for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and you can do that by clicking the link that's underneath me right now. If you'd like to download the world's only customized soccer-specific at-home fitness program on a mobile fitness app. You can do that with our Soccer Fitness Goals app, and the link to download is underneath me now. We'll see you next week on the blog, and until then, keep reaching your soccer fitness goals.